Hello, and thanks everyone for tuning in to another CDI Live Tech Talk. Our conversation today is going to be a live panel discussion all about the digital employee experience. We've brought together several expert CDI solutions architects versed in the modern workspace experience, digital observability, and networking infrastructure to chat about the business value and use case of this exciting technology. If you're watching us on live on LinkedIn or YouTube, please make sure to submit any questions you may have, and we'll answer as many as we can as we go. We'll go around and do some quick introductions. I'll start first. I'm Bob McCouch, Director of Network Architecture at CDI. I've been with CDI for 10 years, and I run the Network Pre-Sales Solutions Architecture team. We'll pass it along. Jason, you want to go ahead?
Yep. Hi, everybody. So Jason McKenry. I am the Director of the Digital Workspace Architects here at CDI. Been with the company for about 11 years now.
And I'm Ed Smoke. I'm the AVP of our Digital Solution Architecture team. Been with CDI a little bit over 6 years now. So pleasure being with this panel today.
Absolutely.
All right. So getting into it. So we're here today to talk about a topic that has come up with a lot of our customers, a number of our vendors. And really, it's revolving around understanding what end users are experiencing in customer environments. So, especially with really the shift to remote work, to hybrid work, this has become really important to understand user sentiment, the user experience, and basically what their day-to-day lives look like. Like any kind of new market, there's a lot of confusion in this space right now. It comes from vendor marketing, analysis, things like that. And so we have, as CDI, we have kind of demystification conversations with a lot of our customers, cutting through a lot of the confusion, terminology, capabilities, things like that in various products suites. And this is one of them. So we wanted to have kind of an open-ended conversation today to talk about what we're seeing in our customer conversations, what we're seeing from our vendors in this space, and kind of how these solutions come together in an environment and what they can do for you. So with that said, I think we'll jump right in. And the very first thing we need to tackle is kind of some clarification on some language that gets thrown around. One of the terms, or a couple of the terms, I guess, that we hear from a lot of the vendors are DEX and DEM and what those mean. So I guess jumping right into that, Ed, you want to kind of give us a quick clarification on what those are and how they break down?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. Happy to. So, when you look at it, endpoint monitoring has become, we've done it in the data center space for a long time, right? But, to your point, it really kind of comes down to also looking at the user's experience. And, when you look at the two terms, to your point, there's DEX and there's DEM. So you have digital employee experience monitoring and then digital experience monitoring. Very close. So, what's the difference? That's, as you alluded to earlier, is kind of where that confusion point has come into. It's really spurred a lot of conversations for us. At the basic level, they both are monitoring and looking at, what's happening on that endpoint, the way you would anywhere in any part of the infrastructure. And it's really a continuous monitoring type model, but they also are able to be actionable and also automated responses to whatever is happening in these particular arenas. Again, both of them are geared towards the end user, but they're kind of attacked in two different ways. So when you look at DEX, or digital employee experience monitoring, it's really that. It's the employee-centric view. I, as an employee, how are my applications running? What's it like day in, day out for me? Versus if you look at a more of a DEM model or just a digital experience monitoring, that's more looking at it from the employee's experience, but not necessarily their applications. What I like to equate that to is something along the lines like an e-commerce organization, right? They want to know why an employee is, make sure an associate or an employee is having a good experience with interfacing with their product or a customer. And they can look in and see, are we having a certain amount of abandonment? Are we having certain things happening in a geo? But it's really kind of that looking in, where if you look at DEX, it's more the looking out. So I'm the associate sitting there at my computer, and is it taking an hour for me to open up an application, or it's just spinning and spinning and taking longer than anticipated, right? So it's kind of addressing individuals that may be suffering in silence, and allows organizations to then move from a reactive approach to a more proactive approach, and then being able to also have, again, some automated remediations. Because with that hybrid workforce today, it's very important, and there's a lot more pain points too. You have local, networks at home. It's not just the, in-office experience that we were able to, have much more control over in the past. So, just to kind of sum up that piece, it's, again, DEX is employee centric, where DEM is more infrastructure centric, or looking, kind of looking in. But, there's been a lot of things, like, that we've talked to different customers about. And I guess one of the things that we look at too is just why there's been such an explosion in the market today. And I know, Bob, you've had a chance to kind of do that just based on your experience within the, the networking space for so many years. And what have you kind of seen, and what's kind of been the driver that maybe you've seen from different customers?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Ed. What we've seen over the last few years, right, in the midst of the global pandemic, and our coming out of that, we've moved into this hybrid workforce world, right? We've got a lot of people that may be back in offices, a lot of people that may be remote forever, and then a large majority that are somewhere in the middle. And a recent study from Gartner um, indicated that 71% of at least U.S. based knowledge workers would continue to be hybrid, throughout 23 and 24. And I think we're seeing that hold true, right? Many organizations are finally starting some sort of real back to the office sort of initiative, but that's still a part-time thing for many employees. And so as a result, we're not seeing we don't have complete visibility into the environments that those users are running their applications from. The other thing that we're seeing, of course, is the big shift toward the cloud, right? 93% of organizations operate in a hybrid or multi-cloud model. So their applications are spread all over the place. They may be running in on-prem data centers, they may be running in colos, and they may be running in one or more public cloud environments. And so again, whereas in the past we had a pretty good level of view from the infrastructure, right? We could monitor network links, we could monitor disk utilization and IOPS for our applications. As we move toward cloud-based hosting of applications, and even SaaS applications, right, being delivered through the cloud, we don't have nearly as much visibility to the underpinnings that help those applications run, nor in the full path, end-to-end path, from that user who in the decades past was sitting at a desk, traversing a corporate LAN, traversing a corporate WAN to reach a data center. We don't have that level of visibility anymore. And so DEX is really a response to that that reality, where we've lost some level of visibility as we've moved toward this combination of hybrid workforce and hybrid cloud, right? Plus, we've done a ton of SaaS adoption. The average large enterprise has over 300 SaaS applications in use, and again, that we have very limited visibility into what's making an application perform or not perform well. And then finally, we've got a real explosion in user device count, right? Most users have not just a computer that's been issued to them anymore. They might have a smartphone, or more than one smartphone, a tablet, some sort of specialized device. We've got IoT devices all over the place as well that operate our environments and our the physical world in our office spaces. So how do we understand what kind of experience all of those users and devices are having, to make sure that they're able to get their job done, whether that job is controlling our HVAC system and keeping the temperature consistent, or whether their job is running one of our applications from anywhere in the world. So those have been the big drivers that we've seen, really kind of move us toward this world of DEX, and the need to add a layer of monitoring that we didn't have before, or a layer of measurement, because we have to expand our capabilities to compensate for the change in how we're delivering our applications. So, and with that said, right, I mean, there's a lot of things we can be looking at and ways that we might be monitoring, and there's a lot of different groups within our organizations that may care about different elements of that. Jason, I mean, what do you see as some of the key areas of employee experience and application experience that our customers are really have a need to monitor, like where do you see the greatest value in using some sort of a DEX platform to monitor the user experience?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is kind of evolving over time as users spread out. They have different experiences day to day, whether they're in the office or at home or wherever they are. So what we're kind of finding is that this breaks down into really four categories. You've got the devices themselves, so whatever the user is holding in their hand, whether it's something that the company owns or it's a personally owned device or whatever. Understanding what that is it healthy, what its security posture is, and what it's contributing to kind of the overall environment. Connectivity, which these days is more varied and versatile than it's ever been before. If we're lucky, we're talking about somebody that's on a LAN that we're controlling end to end. If we're unlucky, it's somebody sitting in a coffee shop with one bar of a Wi-Fi signal, trying to jump on a Teams meeting, and so understanding what that looks like and how it's impacting kind of that overall experience. The applications. And really, these break down into another two categories because you've got, again, the applications that we control end to end, those enterprise apps that we're running out of our data center or private cloud or something like that. But more and more, we've got all of these third-party SaaS apps that are getting lumped into an environment that they're vital to what the users are doing on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of times, we're talking about direct connectivity from, wherever the user's sitting out to that application. So understanding how those apps are running, how they're running for different people in different locations, things like that is really important. And then one of the
If I can interject there, one of the things
yeah,
you got to think about of that intersection of, maybe a web or cloud hosted application and your connectivity to it is it's not the same for every user, right? I mean, there was a time when, again, maybe we knew where our users are sitting and we knew for sure where the application was hosted, but now in, a multi-region hybrid cloud type environment, or in the case of a SaaS application that's hosted through a content delivery platform all over the world, right? No two users are starting from the same place or even ending in the same place to get to their application, right? So it certainly adds like a dimension of complexity, I think, to that, to that angle, right?
yeah. Well, how many times has a customer said, "Oh yeah, Exchange Online's having an issue today," and then it ends up being just for like West Coast users or something like that, and kind of understanding that is really difficult to do.
Exactly.
Well,
So so the old, the application's down or the application is slow complaint. It's really hard to even quantify or qualify what that even means today, right? Because it's rare for a cloud-based application, cloud-hosted application, to be completely down, but it's pretty common for the access to that application or the experience with that application to be degraded for some subset of users or regions or whatever, right? So that's what makes, to me, that's one of the things that makes Dex's ability to look really from the user's perspective toward the applications and help us understand what is their experience like so
Yeah.
important. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow there, but
No,
I just
no,
thought
no,
that was
please.
but
a
no, I
pretty
mean,
important distinction, right?
well, one of the things too, I mean, you both kind of touched on it also was, the ability to kind of regionalize it too. So you look at organizations looking to do, more with less these days, right? So having the ability to see what's happening in a certain region. So, Bob, to your point, if it's an outage in a particular, it could be in California, Midwest, wherever it might be, and it's affecting those users, and you can post that ahead of time, make it, individuals aware. It gives you almost that insight that you had in the office. Oh, the second floor is down, whatever, or this particular office is having challenges right now, right? So it really does give you a whole different level of visibility that you didn't have before, and you can kind of get ahead of maybe some trends that you're seeing that are out there right now from a support perspective.
Yeah,
Right. And it allows the IT organization to get ahead of that rather
Yeah.
than trying to respond to a bunch of tickets that come in that whatever platform, Salesforce or G Suite or whatever it is that you're using is down, right? A DEX platform that's set up in order to, we'll get into a little bit of this, but use, say, synthetic transactions to
Yeah.
test applications continuously from multiple points. It can help the IT organization be proactive in those events and notify users before it becomes a widely spread, obvious issue, and everybody's submitting a 1,000 help desk tickets asking why this application is slow. If you can get ahead of it and announce, say, hey, there's a known issue for West Coast users accessing this application, we're monitoring it and we'll provide updates as they come, right?
Well, and we're hitting around a really kind of important point around these DEX platforms. So we're talking about what kind of data we're looking at, but we need to talk about really what's being done with that data. We've had monitoring tools for years. I mean, I come from a VDI background, and that look at the endpoint, CPU, and memory, and like all of the like nuts and bolts of like how these things are working. And that's great to have all that data that you can drill into. But one of the really cool things that the modern DEX platforms are doing is they're actually taking that data and they're doing intelligent things with it. So we're starting to see, things. I mean, AI is the buzzword right now. We're hearing that everywhere. But machine learning, AI based, analysis of this data. Taking all of those metrics and bubbling the interesting data points up to the administrator. So on a day-to-day basis, me running the environment, I don't have to go digging through all of that to look for anomalies, things that are breaking trends, and really I get the highlight reel and then can go in and drill down into the real data to find, okay, well, let's see if we can do a root cause analysis. In some cases the system's even doing RCA on its own. What's even kind of cooler than that, and frankly, starting to get to like the scary point is because of all that trending, we're starting to see platforms with that machine learning, with that AI intelligence, be able to do kind of predictive analysis on, hey, this is heading the wrong way. It looks like we're about to have a problem that's going to impact users. Because just as an example, a certain version of Chrome on a particular build of Windows, users with that combination are starting to see the processor creep up. We're probably going to start to see issues come up soon, and correlating that data and really kind of making it available. It's very cool stuff that we're seeing out of these platforms today.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? And I think that leads to the question of what are you really? So we've been talking about DEX for 10 minutes now or so, and the question is really, what are you gathering with that? What's different from a standpoint of data you can collect there, right? And the way DEX platforms collect their data is actually through several means, right? One is typically some sort of an endpoint agent. And that's one of the distinctions between DEX and DEM, right? Usually a DEM platform that's maybe used for an e-commerce site may not have visibility from specific end users. A DEX platform typically has some sort of an endpoint agent that might be a browser plugin, or it might be some sort of an endpoint agent that can help with endpoint management and monitoring, or for any of our customers out there that might be using a SASE platform. In several cases, a SASE or SSE platform has a DEX agent that can run through the same client. And so that gives us visibility into a lot of endpoint metrics, right? Things like CPU consumption and RAM utilization, processes that are running, network connectivity, even down to the level of being able to report on or identify a shaky wireless, Wi-Fi connection. So if a user's, trying to open a help desk ticket and say, my access to that application is slow, or the connection keeps dropping, or my RDP set, my virtual desktop session keeps dropping. One of the key questions there in this hybrid remote work world is, do we know that the user is on a reliable network connection? And so by instrumenting the endpoint and being able to report on or identify maybe a low quality or low signal strength home Wi-Fi connection, or maybe a slow home broadband connection, that gives us a lot of insight in what's going on, right? Most DEX platforms also support synthetic transactions. So those are transactions that can be run from endpoints to maybe try a login into specific applications. It could be anything from a trace route or a ping to some sort of a page get, or even a login attempt, to again proactively monitor key applications. So that's really helpful, because to your point, that helps you build trends and baselines. And then once you have a baseline for a particular region of users or specific users to their applications, now you can identify a deviation from that baseline as well. And when I say you can, really the DEX platform does that. And it typically provide some sort of a score, right? So you can watch the trend for maybe an executive's experience score and see when there starts to be a dip there, right? We also look at that outside in application monitoring. Now, again, that may be that may be a sort of a broader topic for the DEM platforms out there, but for DEX, still you want to be able to check maybe from an office location, what's the overall office experience, right, from that location reaching your application, so that it, again, if users on the second floor start reporting they have an issue, you've got an additional baseline of what's maybe happening within the office there. And that can often be done through some combination of direct monitoring of network infrastructure. So certain network infrastructure vendors have the ability to integrate usually their own proprietary DEX platform, whichever one they may be pushing, into their network infrastructure, so that maybe a network switch or a router or a firewall can actually run transactions, synthetic transactions, and monitor performance of the applications as well. And it provides another data point for building a baseline and a trend, because everything here is understanding what's normal, right? If a user's application access is slow, that's not usually the user's primary complaint, unless it's really, really slow, right? If it's too slow to work, that's one thing. But if it typically takes 3 seconds for the main screen for an application to load, the users get used to that, right? And they'll typically work fine in that scenario. The problem is when there's a big deviation and it slows from 3 seconds to 8 seconds, and then the users get very, that becomes problematic. So it's all about understanding that baseline and then looking for the deviations from it. So we see, again, a lot of different data points being collected, right? And there may even be agents that can run within the cloud environment, within the application environment, to, again, look at virtual machines, or elements of the application, and understand their workload and their application flow. And additionally, you can usually tie DEX in to a lot of different other platforms, maybe your full stack observability platform, maybe your MDM platform, maybe your network monitoring and management that's looking more at the network infrastructure itself. So, I think one of the other questions that comes up a lot is and Ed, I think this one's for you. Like, what are some of the key integrations that someone may want to be looking for when they're thinking about DEX, when they're saying, well, this is something that's important to me, the ability to really look at and understand my employees' experience when they're accessing applications, be able to identify a baseline and score, and then get deep into troubleshooting when I need to. But how does that interface with other pieces of their environment, right? Maybe within their ticketing system, within their CMDB. So what would you look for, Ed, in terms of sort of key integrations there, and how those integrations enhance the overall IT operations experience?
So generally what we'll see is, exactly to your point, Bob, we're getting so much data, so much information, but you got to be able to put that somewhere, right? And sometimes it's not always going to reside just within, let's say, the DEX platform itself, but you want to be able to integrate that with your ticketing system, right? Whatever system of record that might be, could be anything from a ServiceNow to a Jira or any other platform that might be out there, being able to bring that information into it. And then, of course, being able to understand what CI is being affected. So we want to take that, integrate it to the CMDB. So this way you can start doing some of that historical trending on it. Apply, I think Jason touched on it earlier, being able to look at it from an AI perspective, right? So become proactive. Maybe it's a small little blip that you're seeing only every so often. So now we were able to, capture that and find problematic CIs within the environment. But it's great that we have the CI, but where is it tied to? Is it a person? Where is that person located? So it's very important to also then integrate to whatever asset management system that an organization would be using, because you want to be able to, again, see those trends, who's, again, we use the term a lot, suffering in silence type of a thing, and be able to then be proactive with them. But of course, a lot of times,
to Jason's point,
yeah.
around the assets, to Jason's point from a couple of minutes ago, right? Maybe there is a specific interaction between a device type or a software load, right, and some upgrade that's happening, or maybe all of
Absolutely.
the devices on a certain Windows level are all getting an automatically pushed update right now. So that tie into your asset database, and being able to see trends or identify a potential trend related to specific asset classes is probably really helpful, right?
Absolutely. It's critical when you're looking to find those anomalies, because to your point, it's who has this version installed, who has this particular piece of hardware, wherever it might be, and tying all of that together. Um, but then, then when we're tying all of that together, though, too, I mean, you touched on earlier, Bob. We talked about like maybe on the West Coast or somewhere, maybe there's a lot of calls coming in. So you want to be able to have. We also integrate it too with different event management tools, right? So this way you're bringing it in, you're correlating that data, and then you can make sense out of it very quickly. But then also go back and do your historical trending on it. Through different observability tools, you can do that too. Depending on what an organization might be using, you have the ability to, again, put it through, look at your events, your logs, your metrics, your traces, all of that sort, and be able to see what type of we're having on a larger scale. And when you think about it, all of this is starting with the individual client. It doesn't have to be something that is being reported at a certain hop or on a national level. You're really taking things at the grassroots level by doing all of these different types of integrations and then making sense out of it and being able to then, make good business decisions for that individual user, or get somebody, get an area back up and running as quickly as possible. So those are kind of some of the key, I would say, key integrations that we've seen, over time with the product.
And we actually, as we were talking here, we had a question come in from the audience, and I guess to summarize it, right? It's really about, are we really putting another client on endpoints, right? Do we have to manage multiple client agents in order to do all this? So I'll open up the field here and see, what you guys, your experience has been with that. I mean, I know it differs a little bit from vendor to vendor, and we can
And it,
kind of name a couple of the vendors, maybe if it makes sense to, just call out a few of the options, just so folks have some idea. But what do you think
well,
around that?
it's a solid. It depends. But so basically, there are players in this space that are part of larger solutions. So, Bob mentioned SASE a little while ago, just to cherry pick an example, but Zscaler as an example has a DEX piece of their product. So if you're already running that platform for SASE, it's something that you can just turn on via a license and a switch and gain access to that without an additional agent. But there are others that are full on standalone DEX platforms, that kind of snap into any environment. They're agnostic to what you're using for SASE or endpoint management or anything else. And because those are standalone, then, that they would be another agent. So I think all of this kind of goes into like what a customer's specific needs are and what the right fit is for them. But I mean, the good news is we're kind of spoiled for choice in this market, and we've got good options that like allow the right fit for the right scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think definitely as we were, I know as we were preparing to do this session, we realized that there's really a lot of variety within this vendor space, right? There's some that are, really kind of network focused, and those tend to be the ones that are associated with a SASE platform, right? So if you've got Palo Alto Prisma Access, there's a DEM product that can be added onto that. And you mentioned Zscaler and their ZDX platform, right? Most SASE vendors have some sort of an observability component that can tie in there, but then there's an entire world of DEX plays that are more around the endpoint management or enterprise asset management. So it may depend a little bit on which group within an organization might be even driving the initiative, but there's plenty of options out there for sure. Ed, was
Oh,
there
great.
something you were going to interject there?
Oh no, I mean I was just going to mention. I mean, Jason touched on it before around different platforms, and if we've had some organizations that are very big, let's say Tanium customers, something along that line, and you're able to utilize your existing client that you have out there that you've already been using for some time on your endpoint management, just to pushing patches and things of that sort. That also now have a very robust type DEX solution. So you're not what you're doing is just gaining more value out of your investment, and then being able to not have to add additional clients or anything like that to the environment. But and again, there are some that are just you touched on earlier, just more network focused, different things like that. You may have something like an app D that's more of a solution like that a lot of organizations have. Again, it's one of the things that we do a lot of too, is being able to understand what tools do you have in the garage, and then how do you gain additional value out of them, because we're starting to see more of that in the ecosystem, where they're developing more and more endpoint management like this within existing tool sets. So it's
Yeah,
been
and
very
I think
encouraging.
anytime. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I think anytime you can take a product that you're already using and extend it to give yourself and your organization new insight, right? Especially into something as important as understanding the employee digital experience here.
Mhm.
I think that's really valuable. So to your point, if you're already using a platform that has a DEX agent or service that you might be able to turn on, maybe with an additional license or something like that, there's a lot of value there. And in some cases, it's even included to some degree. There may be sort of a limited functionality version that may be included as part of another product suite, and then maybe you could extend it there.
Yep.
One of the other questions that's come up from time to time is there anything that spans that realm from DEX to DEM, right? And I know that Cisco's Thousand Eyes product, which is
Mhm.
it was actually really one of the very early sort of deep path
It was, yeah.
analysis tools, right? It's been out there for some time. That's an interesting one because it does kind of span the two worlds, right? You can run an endpoint agent and gain insight into endpoints, but you can also run synthetic transactions from Thousand Eyes pops all over the world into your application. So if you're running an e-commerce application, you can use that to determine, hey, am I having, is there a problem for users in Germany or Hong Kong reaching my application at any given time, or what's typical latency there? So even for customers that might be wondering, hey, maybe I've got a public facing application or a B2B type application, something like that, but I also am interested in understanding my internal employees experience. There's even some options there that can kind of balance on the knife's edge and span between the two there. So
With that,
um,
next thing's another good example of that too, right? Does the same type of monitoring where you have that ability, but it's more of I'll call it a point type solution, but very very robust in those areas.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
so
I
I
know
know we're
we're getting toward the half hour here mark here,
Yeah.
Jason. I was just gonna say, do you want to kind of bring us home and
no,
recap what we've learned today?
absolutely, and obviously we're any of us could talk about this all day long. So
As you can see.
yep. So if anybody does have any more questions or he wants to talk about this, please reach out to your your CDI account manager. If you're new to us, you can get in touch at cdillc.com, and we'll be more than happy to to deep dive this with you. But just to kind of recap a couple of the highlights here. So the DEX solutions that we're talking about, kind of the primary pieces that we're going after are platforms that really enable that deep insight, that observability for hybrid users and companies that are really moving into heavy utilization of SaaS and cloud applications on top of their existing product suite. We're able to use these to help understand the day-to-day life of end users, what the performance of their various systems and connection flows look like, and how that's impacting their ability to do their job. In most cases, we're able to introduce automation to help with remediation, direct facing end user assistance, data analysis for administrative alerts and things like that. And then lastly, these solutions come in a lot of different kind of form factors and packages. And the right fit's going to vary by customer depending on what you have in your environment today, what your specific goals are, and what your user base looks like. And we're more than happy to sit down with you and figure out kind of what that looks like and what the right fit for you is.
Yeah, it's a good point. You actually called out a couple of things there that I don't think we even really got a good chance to talk about during the discussion here, right? And that has to do with things like automated remediation and the ability to communicate to users through the application, let them know when something, when they're what sort of issue they might be experiencing, right? So there's a lot more that we can talk about with this, and For any existing CDI customers, folks like myself and Jason and Ed and the rest of our teams within our solution architecture tower are love to educate our customers. And we've built a presentation around this entire concept that we would love to share with you. So, if this is something that's intriguing to you and you go, this was a nice little taste, but I'd like to learn more. I'd like to get more into understanding really what the product marketplace looks like. That's something we would love to help you with, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Appreciate everybody's time today. This was a great discussion.
Yeah, no, thank you everybody for joining. And just a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube. We're rolling out updates and content like this all the time. So, grab us on those channels, and we'd love to see you again.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much, everybody.
Take care, everybody.